And welcome aboard the Tabletop Express. My name is Chris Barrows, everybody, and I am one of your co-conductors here on the Tabletop Express. I am joined today on Creators Corner by Skye Larsen. Skye, who's one, I want to say, first and foremost, grateful that you're here. Grateful that you've also been a part of the Discord community as well. It's been really great to get to know you over that time, obviously. But today we're really going to dig in and get a chance to know you, as well as for anyone tuning in, whether it be live or after the fact. We're going to be talking quite a bit about Paperback Adventures Volume 2, which is currently on Game Found. I know that as we are recording this, there are 13 days left, so plenty of time to still back that project. And so definitely excited to dig into that. But Skye, first and foremost, again, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me, and thanks for letting me be a part of the community. Y'all have a lot of fun, and yeah, I just love what you guys have built, and I love checking in from time to time. I'm not there all the time, but I do like checking in and watching the VODs especially. So
Oh yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And it's funny. I always joke with any kind of community. It's there's a lot out there, and the board game community is quite a deep community, right? There's a lot of different spaces to go. And so I know many who will tune in to check this out are very interested probably in Paperback Adventures Volume 2. Before we get there, though, I want to get to know you a little bit more. And I want
yeah,
people to get a chance to get to know you. So let me first start out with what I ask everyone on this particular part of our programming, which is your board game origin story. Would love to know what that is. Where did your interest in board games come from?
yeah. I mean, I was always into games, right? Like, was on the more creative side of things, creating fun stories or weird games to play as a kid. But as far as board games, my family wasn't a big board game family. Occasionally we would get, together with extended family and play Uno, Pit, that was like the extent for me, really. Until I had an uncle that apparently he had done a little bit of work on it, but it was mostly his older brothers had made back in the early 90s. They had made a D&D-ish board game, like that you can play without a DM, and they just kind of like went around, because this is way back when they just kind of did the hustle themselves, like made it all, and just like went around to stores and sold it to people. And so they had a bunch of copies left in their garage, so the family garage. So my uncle thought, like let's hand it to him, and yeah, it was really fun. Let me actually, yeah, it's right here. I'll just grab it.
Go, yeah, let's see
It's
it.
called
I love
Talon
it.
Guard. So this is a deep cut for sure. Sorry if I'm showing my belly there. Okay. So yeah. So Talon Guard, you won't find it many places, but honestly, pretty fun game. Pretty ahead of its time in some ways, but yeah, that was definitely my first glimpse at like, well, that's really cool and complex, and like I was probably in second grade or something. It was probably not a game for my age range, but yeah, that was really what got the wheels turning for sure.
It's on BGG, so it is BGG official
Yeah,
there. So
it's a game. If you find a copy, it's honestly very fun. You kind of build your own map. It's got the little, I love how like the cards are like the literal, you like rip them apart. Like they're, it was very much like an American made, like just little paper and cardboard chits type of game. Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a little wild, a little, what's the word? It's like a sandbox game before there was a lot of sandbox games. Like you can steal things, you can like go to the apothecary, but then the apothecary becomes alive and they have rules for that. Like it turns alive and attacks you, and then you make it your friend. Like it's a weird, wild sandbox game, and it's really fun.
no, I love that. Again, 1995, as you mentioned there.
Yeah.
So it's fun. It's always fun to go back to these types of things that I've never heard of before and learn about them, and especially a
Yeah.
family backstory is always very cool. And obviously unique. So it's probably cool to be able to tell a story like that, I imagine, and have an origin like that. But you yourself also have a background in some other gaming areas, because in the world of video games, you have a background. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that, because I don't know
Yeah.
if everyone knows that, but
Yeah.
you certainly have quite a bit of knowledge in that space too.
Yeah. So, my interest in games stayed basically from that point on, and I kind of knew that's what I wanted to do eventually. For a while, I was really interested in video game design. And part of that was because, I mean, when I was graduating from high school, like early 2000s, like there wasn't really, there's no clear path. Like, how do you start doing board games? There was really no like obvious way to do that. So I love video games too. So that's kind of the first path I started down. Early on in my marriage, I was working as a copywriter, working like a 9 to 5, and it was not the life for me. And So I was like, hey, do you mind if I just quit my job and try and make an indie video game? So I worked on it, and my wife was very gracious. One thing I do want to point out, just a small aside, like when you hear these stories of people like Eric Barone, I think is his name, who did Stardew Valley,
Yes.
Concerned Ape, like they do amazing things, and it is like a one-man show or whatever, but you also have to remember, like, his wife was like working behind the scenes, or his partner, I think, was working behind the scenes to like make sure that happened. And while I, spoiler alert, never made a successful successful video game, like, it was only possible because other people are helping you out. So yeah, I tried doing the indie video game thing, worked for a few years with a programmer friend, started to learn how to do pixel art, because when you make a video game, you have to do so much like just art everywhere. And so I was like, well, I better get better at art, because like, I love the design, but I need to help in other ways. So that's actually how I ended up circling back to board games, was because the slog of the video game was taking so long to even just make a demo, and I was missing designing games. And so, because I was just doing pixel art, other stuff, so I was like, hey, I'll make board games, because then I get to just do the design. So that's how I kind of circled back into board games, and that's how I met Tim Fowers, who I've done most of my work with since. And yeah,
I was gonna say, you and I have had, and I've had a chance to connect with you and connect with Tim, and I've got one of the first actual games that I had a chance to play that has Tim's name on it, has your name on it too, which is Paperback Adventures. We have a copy. I want to point out for people that we got Paperback Adventures as a review copy at PAX Unplugged one year. And I remember coming back, and I was really excited because I played this. And at the time, I don't know if you remember, I was not the biggest solo player. Like, it wasn't my thing. I will say Paperback Adventures was the first time I think I got excited about solo. And I've gone down a path since then that I really, really love solo stuff. So, Legacy of You and other games have come along that I've really dug into and picked up. So I'm really intrigued to talk about Paperback Adventures and then kind of dig into what followed. So for those who have not seen Paperback Adventures, I mean, when you talk about it, it is a game that is word-based, right? But there's so much going on. So talk to everybody a little bit about the design behind Paperback Adventures and kind of the thought process that goes into that, because there was obviously other games out there that you and Tim and company had worked on, but Paperback Adventures took a lot of that to a new level.
Yeah. It was definitely a new Fowers games. We pride ourselves on kind of making different stuff, a little more out there, and this was another step in the weird category. Solo focused deck building roguelike word game. Like, that's really the best way to describe it, and it sounds like you're just trying to overwhelm someone with buzzwords, but that's what it is. So the genesis for that was actually, yeah, I'd started doing some work. My first design type work I did was with Burgle Bros 2. And then, so I was starting to just, get some confidence, still mostly helping on non-design stuff. But they had Jeff Krause, who does a lot of like video game adaptations with Tim and some board games. They together had tried doing like a Slay the Spire with paperback, because they're like, well, we made a deck builder. Like, what if we love Slay the Spire? What if we combined them? And they were doing that from the video game angle. And they did it for like a few months, like made a prototype, and it just didn't really click together. So they sent it to the graveyard, which, any game designer knows that a lot of game ideas, even good ones, like end up there. But I was a little stubborn, and I was like, well, what if I tried to make it work as a board game? And so actually during the start of COVID, during the pandemic, like I kind of started putting together this idea, and had some, really the biggest aha moment was this playing mechanic, which we can get to in a second. But I kind of clicked it all together, and eventually went over to Tim's and dropped off a prototype and was like, hey, tell me what you think. And he said, like, let's make it. So
And Tim seems like someone, I just, along the same vein of it, Tim does seem like someone, from all the times I've met him, who puts a lot of thought into what he's doing, a lot of thought and care, but he seems like someone who is open to those new and different ideas, because it does not seem like the things that end up being produced and that have Tim's name on it are exactly like anything else I've seen. They all seem like there's a uniqueness to them in some way or form. Even more recently, it was, and I apologize because I'm butchering the name here. But yeah, but is it Typewriter, right?
Yeah.
Like, so Typewriter, which I grabbed at last PAX Unplugged. I had picked it up. I bought it from the booth. And I remember seeing Typewriter, which has, by the way, for people who go to play Typewriter, like, these are the like clunkiest, like, they're great, like in this good way, where you pull them from the bag, you hear them jingle, but playing with words in these different ways that others weren't even touching, it felt like. So can you talk to me a little bit what it's like to work with Tim on a game like this? Because he seems like, again, a very creative mind, but one that clearly seems to be looking for new ideas.
Yeah. I think Tim's very much like, he's someone who's driven by, he wants to create something like new and meaningful. So yeah, like, we've even had ideas at different times, and like, it really does happen where you have an idea as a designer and someone comes out with something like kind of close, and you're like, oh darn, and I think it's okay to keep pursuing your design, change it, tweak it, whatever. But Tim, for him, that would be just, he's like not interested, right? Like,
right.
It just, he doesn't have that drive anymore if it's not pushing some type of like new boundary, or just doing something interesting. And working with Tim's great. We our neurodivergencies work well together. And we're both people who are highly creative, and also like a little scattered sometimes, and just kind of, we appreciate having a little more freedom kind of working together. And like, he's great. Sometimes it's infuriating, like how much he wants to like develop a project. And I know we do Kickstarters and crowdfunding a little differently than some companies. Like, a lot of these bigger companies are a little more, it's the product's ready to go, and it's, they send it out pretty shortly after. We're always tinkering. And that's, like I said, that can be a little maddening sometimes, but for the most part, it's just what makes us, helps us to make like a worthwhile product, because, we come up with ideas later on, and, we just want to make sure that the game is as good as it can be. And so it can take a little bit longer doing it that way. But yeah, like, I can't imagine making games another way, honestly. So.
Well, when you talk about this game, though, one of the things that stands out to me that and again, we are still talking about kind of the original iteration here, because we're going to dig in a moment into what's coming out and what people can, potentially purchase in this period of time. But it's a game that has really clear and clean art to me. It's got a very specific look and feel, really good iconography. So I'd be really interested in those kind of decisions that go into it, because even when I look at the cards in particular, you do have a choice of which side am I going to go on. I mean, I know the card here has an L on both sides, and that's not always going to be the case, right? But it does seem like making gameplay something that's pretty easy to pick up is at the focus of a lot of these games, and they are ones that aren't meant to necessarily challenge you in terms of playing them, but in terms of optimizing and maximizing the experience, you're looking at a deeper strategy.
Yeah. And I'd say Paperback Adventures is like our heaviest game, if you want to call it that. But overall, the mechanics are pretty simple. There's the splaying mechanic, which you can kind of see there. Like there's icons, on both sides of the letter. And so if you splay one way, it will usually be more, aggressive. But you could spell the same word. For example, right there, we have death. You could flip it so that the H is the top card, and then all the others splay out the other way, and that would make for like a more defensive, ability usually. So, that splaying mechanic was huge for just really kind of simplifying, like, a attack, because like that's what was different with versus Paperback, which was just a word game, kind of like Dominion. You build a lot of points that you turn into money, and then you use that money to buy more cards, which is a great satisfying mechanic. But with the solo mode, you actually mentioned earlier, right, that you bounced off of solo games originally, and that was the same for me. And I think a lot of that was like this point style systems didn't really click for me. I know there's other solo players who feel the same. And so for Paperback Adventures, I was like, well, I want to fight. Like I want to not because I want to fight. Like we have some kind of goofy, we have there's a handsome hunk in this, or a pesky suitor. But I want to defeat something, right? Like I want to feel like I accomplished something instead of just trying to hit a score. And so that splaying mechanic was really important for keeping it simple, because we didn't want like, here's an ability, here's an ability, here's an ability. So instead it's just one ability that goes off, and then you add up either like a bunch of hits or a bunch of defense.
Yeah, and it does come with, I kind of had it right here, but I mean, obviously you did a concept that I know happens with Final Girl as well, which is the fact that, like, for example, this is a core box, right? And so you have the core box system, and then you have to have that core box and then you've got the additional boxes that you pick up that you then are going to be playing through. But that core box does come, just so people know, with like quite a bit of variety, like as I'm holding it there. So it's there's a lot in here, right, in terms of the different experiences you're going to have, because you've got the bosses and then you've got the lackeys. So you've got a lot to go through that's in this box. And again, in that initial experience, it was that solo focus, right? So what I find very interesting as we kind of talk about this evolution, and I remember saying to you, I feel like it was in the past year, like, oh, I hope we get more boxes at some point. Like and then you didn't say anything. You were mum, right? And I was excited to talk to you, because I remembered saying that to you at one point. And with that in mind, it's here now that people are going to have an opportunity to either dive into this game or dive back into the game, depending what that experience is going to be. And actually, let me bring up the correct screen. It would help if I did that. But you are on GameFound right now, and one of the things that this does differently is you've added a cooperative mode, but you're still, I know, offering the solo experience. So talk to us through the decisions on adding cooperative and any other additional things that you might have added here with the latest Kickstarter.
Yeah. So, I mean, the number one thing, like, obviously once the game, released and had some level of success, like, of course I was instantly like, yeah, I want to do more, right? Create more characters and more content for everyone to play. But we wanted to take our time. Part of that's just because we're like at Fowers Games is such a tiny team. So, when we're working on something like Typewriter, for example, like it's hard to get a lot done with a different game other than just kind of making sure you're still thinking about it. So one of the main things we wanted to do was kind of just not just have like one more character box, but we also wanted just a new reason to play Paperback Adventures. And we knew that one of the big things that held it up was just the solo only aspect. And it had some variant rules for co-op, but the game wasn't designed for it. Like we just wanted, we wanted to let people play with their partner or with a friend. So yeah, when we came back to it, we're like, this would be a really big value add, for people who play the game. It's like, oh, now I can play it with a bunch of friends, and really kind of enjoy, because when you're playing a roguelike style game where you get to like do all the upgrades and you get to pull off cool combos, like one of the most satisfying things is like, showing that off to other people. And so that's what I love about co-op games is, sharing those moments together. So we wanted to do multiplayer. We went through a lot of iterations. I got the help of Riley, who I believe stops in Tabletop Express from time to time.
Yeah, Riley Stock.
Yeah, Riley Stock. So they've been helping me with just the multiplayer as well. And we finally found a system that just really locked in, and we're really excited for people to try it out. It lets you play simultaneously, so that the game still moves pretty quick, because word building can take a little bit of time. So yeah, you're all building words together and then watching each other do cool combos. You're juggling enemies between one another. There's a lot of cooperation, and yeah, like that. Once that clicked in, we're like, okay, now we have this other character that we've been cooking up, the Iron Knee, the fighting character, kind of a martial artist style thing. So yeah, we decided to release those two together, and we finally felt good enough. Like, here's something valuable that we can, show off to people. So,
but there's a lot of replayability. I think it's good for people to understand with this because you've got the different characters.
Yeah,
you can go up against the different It's the replayability was I feel like pretty strong with the initial batch anyways, but now you're just adding into the replayability as well, because as it mentions here, there's 90 unique cards in there anyway, so you're adding a ton of extra stuff to be able to play with, as well as the co-op. For those who are used to the solo, what are the biggest things that people are going to have to grapple with the changes from when they go into the co-op? Is it going to have is there a lot of similarity in terms of a feel? Can you talk that through a little bit?
Yeah, one of our number one design goals was to make it still feel very much like you're still playing Paperback Adventures. I didn't want it to be just a completely new game, because I like the game I made. I like the way it works. So, I want people to keep playing that. But so the kind of main key difference is that before you start your turn, so before you even draw your cards, everyone has to kind of work out together which enemy you're going to match up against. So you're always matched up against one enemy. And that's actually what lets the gameplay stay very similar, because once you lock into that one enemy for the turn, then everything's normal, right? You're not splitting your damage elsewhere. You're not, trying to all pile up your damage on one enemy. Like you're just doing the normal thing you do on a Paperback Adventures turn. But that the way that you can switch enemies, there's just one rule that kind of governs it, which is you can't match up against the same enemy that you just played against. So you can't sit on the same enemy. And that means that you're just naturally kind of like bouncing back and forth. And anyone who's played Paperback Adventures knows that the enemies, they all have really unique designs, and they kind of have like patterns that you really have to kind of play around. You can't just, oh, I did my combo, I did my cool thing. You have to kind of, oh, they're hitting me for over half my life. Like I have to block, right? So because you're switching enemies between each other, like you're kind of like, you'll start to be like, well, I'm good at defending, so I'm just going to keep like, oh, he's doing a big hit, let me fight him this turn, and it lets you kind of specialize in a way. It lets you feel like you have the cool thing that you do. So yeah, that's a big difference. If you scroll down just a tiny bit there, the other kind of important thing that makes that work is the loose ends. So that red card right there. When you defeat an enemy, then you draw a loose end card, and that's just, everyone still has to match up against one thing. So you're either matching up against an enemy, or now there's a loose end that's out there. And they have fun themes, like just like other things that are happening, almost like layer actions if anyone plays D&D, but just like there's rocks falling, or the water's rising, or there's a dart trap, things like that. And that just is a new thing that someone has to match up against. So they say like, hey, I'm good at, generating energy. So the rising water says if you don't generate energy, then everyone loses energy. So it's like you have a new thing that you have to, match up against until all the enemies are defeated. So that's really it as far as like the different rules.
It's really just layering on some extra challenges and the core choice of who you're going up against.
Yeah.
That's the core piece. It is something, again, from a perspective, one of the other items I wanted to ask about, because I feel like this gets asked about a lot more than maybe in the past, and at least in the last 5 years I see all the times, is there going to be a big box? Is there going to be a big box? Well, you have talked about the big box as part of this. So talk to me first and foremost about how you determine if there's demand for that sort of thing. But I'm also interested, once you know there's demand, that process of actually designing this to be a functional and effective box is something I've seen be hit or miss. So I'm really interested in how you kind of work to make sure, man, this is really going to deliver to make the gameplay, experience of setting up good, and also the storage, because there's a lot that you have to accomplish with one of these.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully we land on the hit side. Obviously we won't know until it's out there.
Yeah.
But we did, like you said, there is just kind of a general demand. Like people just want big boxes, like to hold all the stuff. But we also, heard other things like, I want to play Paperback Adventures, but it's hard to get it, out to the table, or, it's hard to pull out everything. Like it takes a long time to set up, and, and then the modularity of the game is important for making it work, but it can be tricky. Like, what did I put in what box? And people had some concerns there. So we really wanted to just make it as seamless as possible, like add as many small little things that just help you play the game faster, get the game to the table easier, things like that. So for example, the enemy cards, now they just kind of lie vertical with like an index system, and you can just kind of quickly find the enemy you need, pull it out. And the little tuck boxes, so each character just has a tuck box now with everything that they need, because of the modular style of the game. Like a lot of the sizes just to fit those trays, but you just basically have some cards, right? And so those all just go in a tuck box, and then the cards, that a lot of the items and different rewards, we call them MacGuffins. They're like relics in Slay the Spire. So those all get mixed together, right? And so now those can just go in their own tuck box of like all the mixed together items, all the mixed together MacGuffins, etc. So it just makes a lot of sense actually in a big box with a modular game like this, because you can kind of put everything where it needs to be, and then just pull out, like, oh, I'm playing the robot, just pull it out really quick and you're good to go.
Yeah, and I know people get very excited about it. I always laugh, because now we see, and this isn't the first time we're seeing it, but everyone's saying, by the way, yes, it's a Calyx-sized box. Yes, it's going to fit on your shelf. Because there are definitely plenty of games in my collection, games that I really like, but as much as I love Maximum Apocalypse, it does not fit on my shelf in its big box effectively, and so all my love for the game, but that's what
it's big, but not too big. And then as you see right there, this is another like pain point for people that we've heard is just the trays didn't work for everyone. We had an issue with the tokens. Now every box comes with the smaller tokens that fit really easily, but some people would have issues with the tokens just kind of being a little hard to push in, and the tray being a little kind of flimsy on the table, like easy to move. So the big box will actually come with just completely new trays with a thicker plastic that should, stay on the table where you want it. And the tokens, reworked. So we really did try and think of like, what are these, the small, every game has like the small things that people, bring up as issues. And this is a good opportunity to, try and fix as many of those issues as we see.
Oh no, and I love that again. And for those who are, of course, interested, the page is up here. It's on GameFound if you are specifically looking for it. So you can see it all here. Complete collection is one of those options, obviously. And I know you've got some stretch goals. So one of the things I always ask folks who've got something on Kickstarter or GameFound is because, as you've mentioned earlier on, you do like to be creative and you do like to kind of keep working. You're not necessarily with your particular projects coming with, hey, everything's done kind of product. You are clearly looking at what people are saying, but you've also got stretch goals and other things. So talk about some of the stretch goal settings and what goes into that, because obviously you have a mindset that this will work in the game. But I have to imagine that this is a process to pick the stretch goals you do want to include, and also when it comes down to it, picking the right amount of stretch goals.
And we really dialed it down for GameFound. It seems like there's a little less of a stretch goal, culture on GameFound versus Kickstarter. And honestly, it's a lot of work to keep up with, making stretch goals. So we wanted to just focus on kind of big, meaty stretch goals for this one. So you have things like the book for bosses. Speaking of pain points for people, we've had plenty of people say like, and I get it, I really do get it. Like, oh, I beat the book 3 boss and I had this really cool build with, these perfect cards that synergized. And then I had to stop and I didn't want to stop. So there's kind of 2 separate things, actually. There's a extended series mode that will just let you keep playing with kind of just ramping challenges. And then when you feel like, okay, I'm as strong as I'm ever going to be, then we have book 4 bosses that we're releasing in these, we already have one with Irony in that first stretch goal. So these book 4 bosses are kind of just an impossibly overpowered type boss where you really, you want to make sure you've got the perfect cards, to be able to beat them.
I was gonna say, some of those book 3 bosses can get pretty tough.
Yeah, no, they really can. So these stretch it to ridiculous levels. They're also kind of meta. We wanted to kind of make them special in their own way too, thematically. So they're kind of meta breaking, or fourth wall breaking, I guess is the right word. So like the one for Irony is going to be Paige Turner, who, if you played some Paperback, she's the author of all the Paperback stories. So you're actually you're going to match up against the person writing your story. So, watch out. And the other one that we haven't revealed yet will have a similar type of, kind of that fourth wall breaking type of feel. So.
Yeah, and I just for folks who have not played Paperback, it is I again and having played Slay the Spire too, I have just an appreciation for the kind of, and obviously both very different games, right? But they still have that mentality of building up and fighting monster and fighting another monster, and so that's the similarity, right? But they're built on that same love and lore at the same time, knowing you and talking to you about this. So I do feel like maybe people, if you've never played it, you wouldn't maybe think of it with words, but it works incredibly well. I mean, I don't know if you saw this earlier, but we did have this comment, massive game purge, but they kept
I didn't see that.
So
Oh, that's awesome.
So I do think a game has to stand a test of time these days, right? I mean, you've got a collection behind you as well, but
Yeah.
we really can only have so many that are actually going to get played, right? So
Mhm.
the demand of a designer, it's challenging these days, I have to imagine, with the amount of games that are produced amongst even all the challenges, tariffs and whatnot. There are still a lot of games out there that are
Yeah.
coming out, and how do we pick that? So I'm intrigued what you play, and what's
Yeah.
on, because I know I know you play some PC games. I'm gonna get to that, but on the
Mhm.
board game side, what are the games that you're playing?
Yeah. I mean, I'll start with the boring answer, which is everything. As a designer, and you have to, right? Or at least I think you should. And I have the benefit of playing, uh, um, uh, going to weekly game nights. Well, I don't usually go every week, but going to game nights with Space Biff, who's a
Yeah.
reviewer that's local here to me. So that helps me play games I would never play, like these complex Euros and like coin games and things that just I would never pick up. But it lets me get those ideas in my system, right? If I just get a pick, I mean, it's right there, Spirit Island. That's gotta be that's gotta be top for me. I just love co-ops. I love combo building, engine building. So that's one I always am really happy to pull out. Uh, yeah. So like anything that is doing either what people call multiplayer solitaire, but for me is really fun. Just building up an engine. I think I've got Terraforming Mars is somewhere back there too. Like Arc Nova, that doesn't fit in the Calyx, so it's got to go in a different spot. Anything that's letting me play like that kind of, I get to build my own thing and see how it goes. Maybe that's a game designer thing. I don't know, but I just love games that let me like kind of tinker and just do something new and different and see if it works out. And I still always play to win, but I'm very much more motivated by like I did a cool, interesting thing, and that was exciting.
Well, I saw
So
I see Creature Caravan behind you, which I've enjoyed solo
yeah,
particularly
yeah,
well. I like it, so I tried it once, two-player, and I have no objection to it, but it just works as a wonderful
yeah,
solo. It's kind of relaxing, actually, in a
yeah.
weird, even though there's zombies technically. I think that's what they technically.
It's yeah,
I don't know how to describe it.
it's pretty chill, yeah. And I actually did a little work on that one, just a little bit. But yeah, and that was because I literally saw it at like a convention. Was like, I desperately want to help with this game because it's hits all my boxes. The kind of chill, laid back attitude, and then just building those really sweet tableaus with, can I put all the perfect cards together to do cool stuff? Like, yeah, love it.
I'm not surprised that you said, because as you mentioned, Terraforming Mars and Arc Nova, it does have that
Hmm.
happening with the trying to get those right combos. Though the deck is a little bit smaller, I'd argue, than
Yeah,
the Arc Novas, so it's a little bit more
yeah.
doable
Arc
for me.
Nova's got a huge deck.
I can't do it. People like have told me, like, how do you not like Arc Nova? I have nothing against it. I can't build what I want with it, and I get
Hmm.
frustrated.
No, I
uh
get it. I get it. The expansion, for anyone who has that same problem, I know it's a tough sell when it's like, I didn't like the first game, but
yeah,
the expansion does help with that a little bit.
I
They
do
did a
hope.
lot of like moving the market and just helping things not get stuck, because I get it. Like I like building the cool combos, but in Arc Nova, there's plenty of times where you're like, nothing is working out. And that's frustrating.
Look, there is a game we agree on, and it's not in the board game world, but I want to talk about it because I've got one of the wonderful things when we have a chance to connect people through Discord. Sometimes if they're listening to music or if they're doing something on like Steam or something, we get, you can
Yeah.
see it right in the corner. One thing I noticed is you do like some of these world building games of sorts, or where you're, because I've seen you on uh on there playing Civ.
Hmm.
And we've talked about this a little bit
Yeah.
off camera, but what is it about a game like, say, Civilization, which is obviously an incredibly popular PC game, right? Which
Yeah.
has its newest iteration out within the past year. So I'm
Mhm.
really intrigued, what is it about a game like that that gets your interest? And do games like that impact also your thoughts on board game design? Not necessarily that one specifically, but do even the
Yeah.
PC games impact that?
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about Civ first. Yeah, I love Civ. Really any kind of strategy type game, I'll at least take a look at. But Civ just throughout the years has held my attention. It really is a board game, but on the computer in a lot of ways. And I just love that sense of exploration, where you just, especially for those first, 30, 50 turns, you're just kind of like, there's just a whole new map. You don't know what it's going to look like. And you get to just see where stuff appeared next to each other and just be like, oh, cool. Like, I'm right next to Mount Everest, and that, gives me these bonuses. And yeah, like I just love just that sense of exploration and just trying something different every game. For people who haven't played Civ, there's at least in every version I've played, there's multiple paths to victory. So I also love that in any type of game where you could just defeat everyone, but just conquer the entire world. But I never choose that route. It doesn't vibe with my personality or my playstyle. And so, yeah, like you can try and win a culture victory or win a science victory. And yeah, so I love that aspect of it. As far as like PC games and computer games in general influencing my design, they certainly do. I definitely, anytime I play a video game I love, I'm like, how could I make this a board game? And I think we've seen some success with that. It's obviously very popular right now to make those ports from popular video games to board games. And I think the games that turn out well are because someone liked that game and saw the core principles that make the game work instead of just the mechanics or the look or whatever. They kind of understood what makes the game tick and then did their best to translate that to a board game. So, another computer game I play a ton of is Teamfight Tactics, which is part of Riot's League of Legends game, but it's just it's called an auto battler genre. So, we've worked on making an auto battler and like, how would you make that work? And then someone made challengers and beat us to it a little bit. But yeah, so whenever I play a video game I love, I'm always like wanting to translate that to a board game. And it just, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think Civ games have a really hard time, for example. I think Shut Up Sit Down just made a video about Innovation, actually, but Innovation's probably the game that did Civ games best, and it's the one that looks the least like a Civ game because it's just a bunch of cards. I would say even not very attractive cards. Sorry to the publisher, but not a lot of fancy art or anything like that. But it just captures the feeling of like building something and not knowing if it will work out and finding new things that you didn't expect to find. So
Well, I
yeah.
do have a question, by the way. You mentioned
Yeah.
some. If there's any others you want to mention, just because did ask whatever games you might be playing at the moment. And again, I know
Yeah.
I can speak to the fact that I know you're playing Civ because
Yeah.
I just, so people know, I've seen you on Discord. Be like, man, I really eventually got to get the new one, but I'm gonna stick with the old one a little bit longer. Wait till they give me this grand, like, everything in one package and then get it. But anything else that is coming up that maybe you didn't mention,
Yeah.
like there's some interest.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always the smart way for Civ. If anyone's wondering, I'm like, I'm putting a ton of hours into it, but you probably should just wait for the whole thing.
Because it's going to be around for a long time. Whatever
Yeah.
this iteration is will exist for years. So
Yeah. So yeah, like I mentioned, I'm playing Teamfight Tactics. That's kind of I usually have one, what do you call it? Like confrontational, like online, versus other people style game I play. That's all I can handle is one at a time. So in the past, I've been into like Hearthstone or League of Legends. That was a long time ago. I'm too old for League of Legends now, but and I don't like fighting with people. Overwatch was another one I played for a long time. I don't know. Lately, I want to get into oh gosh, Endless Legends. I think is Endless Legends, which is kind of older, but I've heard good things. Yeah, like I said, if any type of strategy game, I'm gonna like kind of have my eye on it and see if it's worth checking out. So really, I'm kind of boring. Part of the reason you see me on Civ all the time is because I get into like comfort mode and I just like to play the same game over and over for a while. And it's also a really good one when you have a new kid, a new baby. So because Civ, you just like leave it and he just like, no, I don't have to do anything. I can just immediately leave and go see why he's crying or
Right, because you don't have to start your next turn.
Yeah.
I am intrigued, just for people, because one thing I ask everyone on this show is, especially in the position of someone who's designed a game, what is the kind of advice you do give to those folks who say, yeah, I'm really interested, like I'd love to design a game? And I have had, it's fascinating. I just want to kind of put it out there. I've had so many different responses to this over the course of time, because I do think everyone has a different style, but all the advice has at the same time been, I feel like, really helpful, and it all comes from a different place. So one of the wonderful things that I want to just say before you answer, I appreciate you giving a chance for people to get to know you, because I do think that's part of the reason that stuff is so helpful, because everyone is a little bit different. And when you really, if you're able to connect with, a vibe or how someone is, and then they share some advice, that might be the advice for you. So intrigued. Now going back to that, what do you tell that person who says, I am interested in designing a game? I have ideas. How should I start this process?
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine you've gotten lots of different answers, because I think that's just the truth of it, is there's lots of different routes. What I would say, I mean, my route was just literally tenacity. Like I just, I had the privilege of being able to kind of just go for it and just really put all the time into it. And that's how, I eventually stumbled into Tim Fowers and just started kind of designing my own game next to him, and then he eventually like started letting me make games with him. So I would say like that's a big part of it, is just keeping at it. I know that's really vague, but I mean it's just what I was able to do, right? But it wasn't just I have this one game idea and that's all I'm going to do. Like I was looking up information. I'll say that's something that's way better now than it used to be. Like when I was first interested, I was like, well, people make Magic the Gathering cards, right? Like that someone has to come up with the idea for the card, so like who how do you get that job? And so, back then there was really one of the only people writing was the designer Mark Rosewater for Magic the Gathering. He would do weekly articles on design. And nowadays, like, there's so much like on YouTube, podcasts everywhere, podcasts like this, or, YouTube channels like this. Like, like I was just trying to absorb everything I could with design, learn every lesson I could, work on multiple games and just really not take no for an answer and just keep working until something worked out. The way I met Tim Fowers was through a game design meetup. So in Utah, we have Board Game Designers Guild of Utah. And I know there's, similar guilds all over. So I would definitely encourage, like, try and find that type of group. Because you might meet someone like Tim Fowers or whatever, but also it's just, that's how you can actually start to develop your ideas, play test them, and not just kind of have the cool idea in your head. And, when you play it with friends and family, they're not going to give you the same type of feedback as, people who don't know you as well. So like that's going to really help you kind of progress. And I would honestly just go there and play test. Like they're always going to be super excited to have someone there helping test without being like try my thing. And that will let you kind of, learn more, and also just, build some good relationships until you're ready to, start sharing your own stuff.
I like that you talk about building good relationships, because there's one
Yeah.
thing I've learned, even as a channel, and a lot of it has been with PAX Unplugged, obviously, but
Yeah.
the conversations with publishers, designers, and there's building trust. That's part of
Yeah.
it. And I've shared it with many people, but the difference of talking to a publisher or designer the first year we went versus 3 years later, I mean, it's night and day,
Yeah.
because they say one that, well, I joke as a content creator that they see that we still exist, which is, year one of anyone in that space. It's okay, cool. We'll see if you're here in a year, right? But
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
really is a trust that you get to build, because you get to talk about their game. You get to see, you could tell that they've done things, and you get to be able to get to know them, right? So
Mhm.
on that note, I gotta say, I appreciate the chance to, again, getting to know you better,
Yeah.
to share more about that. I know you have said you'd be willing to take some more questions on the Discord, so
Yeah,
we'll let
absolutely.
people know.
Mhm.
There's a link to the Discord. I will have probably set up tomorrow a ask me anything. So if you do have questions from time to time, Skye will be popping on and be able to answer some of those questions. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, important, of course, to remind everybody, Paperback Adventures Volume 2 is currently on GameFound. 13 days left at the time of this recording. Congratulations on, obviously you're at the funding mark. Now it's a matter of, getting those stretch goals and all that jazz. So go ahead and
Yeah.
make sure you do check this out. Like I said, I will just remind people that when I played this for the first time with Volume 1, it was one of my favorite games of that particular year. So I'm definitely personally excited to try Volume 2, and definitely will encourage people to check it out. I can say, if you do like the style of game that is kind of Slay the Spire, you're probably gonna like this, because it's got that going on, and you're just using words to do it, which
Yeah.
is in a really cool way. So
Yeah.
anything else you want to share before we go, or anything that you want to get out about the game before we wrap up here tonight?
Not much. I'll just say, building off what you just said, like, I just encourage you. I know it's scary when you hear word game, yeah, like, if you're not a huge Scrabble player, I would still, just take a look at some of the gameplay, see what the word aspect is like, because it might not be what you expect. It's not about weird words in the dictionary no one's heard of. That can help you, sure, but it's really about the, using your cards, lining them up in the right way. So yeah, just check it out, see if it's the thing for you. I know it's not going to be the thing for everyone, and that's not what we're trying to do, but yeah, just, yeah, check it out if some parts of it seem intriguing.
Yeah, and if there are any questions, definitely let us know in the comments, or feel
Yeah.
free to come on over and hang out with us in the Tabletop Express Discord. Just so folks know, we are going to be back next week with another video, toying around. We've maybe talk about some betting games. We might have a few surprises for you. We'll be back in the week that follows with some of the folks over from Kess to talk a little bit with them on Creators Corner, and then wrapping up the month, of course, with Call Aboard, our live call-in show, which you've never participated in. I just encourage you to come check it out. We are
It's
one of
really
the
cool.
few.
Yeah.
There's might be one other one, but we're a live board game call-in show. So come on and participate with us, and call in, talk about your favorite game that you played in the past month or two, and we'd love to hear from you. So we love new callers. We had a few last time, actually, on our last episode, so we'd love more of you. So come and join us for Call Aboard, which we do at least twice a month. And on that note, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us here tonight. If you come and tune into this live, definitely leave a comment with any questions, or come on over and say hi on Discord. With that, I'm going to say thank you to you, Skye, for being a part of tonight's episode. And then I'm going to play the music and head us home. We'll see you all next week at our more normal time of 9 p.m. Eastern on a Wednesday. Talk to you soon, everybody.
See ya.